Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. Just finished this book a couple of hours ago and it's got me thinking, so I figured I would wrote down some thoughts and make a video about it. I know I haven't done a whole lot of like individual book reviews on this channel. Maybe I'll start doing that a bit more. So yeah, give it a like if you liked it. If you like these sort of types of videos, consider subscribing if you're new, and we'll hop into it. Before we do though, obviously spoilers, sort of goes without saying. With this book, we'll be covering things like, sorry, just pulling my notes up. Things like a brief plot overview, some of the themes. Sorry, I was just looking at the parking area outside my apartment. Someone almost just hit another car, whatever. But yeah, we'll be talking about plot, themes, language, characters, that sort of stuff. Spoilers, obviously. So, brief plot overview of A Clockwork Orange. The book is set in a future state. Oh, sorry, let me level out the camera a bit again. Need to get a not so shitty tripod. There we go. But it's set in a future version of London, England, where the government is sort of losing control and the streets are overrun by these teenage gangs. And it follows the story of one guy in particular named Alex and his gang. He's sort of the leader of this gang, and the story is told in first person but retrospectively, so it's sort of like the main character Alex is sitting right next to you and just talking to you, which is pretty interesting. He's retelling the story in a sense. And yeah, it sort of goes through some of the things that they get up to, and what comes to him because of that. I asked myself this question as soon as I finished it, of whether or not I thought it was a quote-unquote a literary masterpiece. What does that even mean in today's day and age? I just sort of think of it as like, did I like the book? And yes, I liked it. I think it is one of the masterpieces out there, which is interesting because the author doesn't think so himself. In the introduction here, the author, Anthony Burgess, sort of sees this book as too elementary. It was written sort of early on in his career, and he thought his later books deserved much more acclaim than this one got. So interesting connection there. There's a lot of references to Beethoven, as it's funnily enough, Alex's favorite artist, and obviously Beethoven's earlier works were more widely liked than his later works. So interesting that a similar fate happened with the author's work as well. The way I would describe this book is sort of if Crime and Punishment met 1984 met Catcher in the Rye, in the sense that in Catcher in the Rye, it's told from the story of a man, or a boy, I guess, a teenage boy, and it is again told retrospectively in first person, like he is just there sitting next to you. Holden Caulfield here, whereas Alex in this book. Both the main characters, Holden and Alex, are the same age. They both start when they are 15 and they end when they are 18. And yeah, interesting to notice that similarity as well. And then similarities with 1984, there are sort of similarities and stark differences. So obviously if you haven't read 1984, I guess probably not a spoiler, but whatever. Sort of the main premise is the government is controlling everyone and everything. And and there's this way of talking and this way of thinking, groupthink, doublethink, group speak, I believe is something in there as well. Yeah, the government is controlling everyone and everything. In A Clockwork Orange, the government has sort of lost control of everyone and everything, and these teenage gangs are basically roaming the earth, roaming London and terrorizing the streets. And there is another language similar to doublethink, but it's its own made-up language called Nadsat within this book, and it is the language that the teenage gang members like speak. It's like slang that they say to one another, and it's actually a mixture between Russian and English. It's more of like a English version of Russian. I have the Wikipedia page pulled up here. It says Nadsat is a fictional register used by the teenage gang members in A Clockwork Orange. The author Burgess was a linguist, and he used his background to depict his characters as speaking a form of Russian-influenced English. There you go. The name comes from the Russian suffix equivalent of teen, as in 13, Nadsat was also used in the film adaptation of the book as well. So interesting points there for sure, and you don't really get a grasp of it until you read it. I figured I would read a early passage from an early page, just so you can get an idea of what this new language really sounds like. So here goes nothing. So it reads, so we scattered out into the big winter notchie and walked down Margarita Boulevard and then turned onto Boothby Avenue. And there we found what we were pretty well looking for, a Malenki jest to start off the evening with. There was a dottery, starry schoolmaster type Vec, glasses and his rot open to the cold notchy air. He had books under his arm and a crappy umbrella and was coming around the corner from the public biblio, which not many ludies used those days. Never really saw many other older bourgeoisie type out after nightfall these days. What with the shortage of police and we find young Machickiewicks about. And this prof type Chelovic was the only one walking in the whole of the street. So we gollied up to him very polite and said, pardon me, brother. So yeah, you can sort of get a sense of that language, that Nadsat slang type language, as Alex is telling you the story from his recollection. And like I said, the language is used in the book, or the book and the film. And I tried to watch the film today as well. I only made it about a quarter of the way through it, and I thought it was terrible. For one, the movie came out in 1971, so I'm not knocking it for its age, but the audio mixing on it was pretty abysmal. It's like the characters aren't speaking, but someone is like reading the book over the movie audio, and you can't really hear what people are saying versus what the book is like being read to you as. It was pretty confusing to follow along. There's some interesting stylistic choices as well. And yeah, this is a very brutal and vulgar book, and so putting that into a movie format is definitely not for the faint of heart. Look up your trigger warnings and all that sort of jazz before reading this book. I don't think it should like deter you away, but just have that frame of mind going into that book, going into this book, I should say. And yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about it. There's some messed up things that happened, and that brings me to my last and final point here about the title of the book, A Clockwork Orange, and what does it actually mean. Like I said, some spoilers. Along the way, the author says A Clockwork Orange is sort of the meaning of it got lost in translation in the various, this book was released in various other countries, lots of other countries, and the translation of the title sort of lost meaning there. And so what do I think that the title means. Well, what is the central theme of the book? So, spoilers again, sorry, I'll try to make this quick, but the main character, Alex, in this gang does all these terrible things to people. He gets caught up, and eventually he gets caught. He gets sentenced to prison for 14 years at this age. He's only 15. He sort of is on his own. He's on his best behavior for 2 years in prison. Then he hears word of this new program that is happening, a sort of experiment of sorts to sort of cure these teens of their violent tendencies and then release them back onto the streets. So he signs up for that. He's the first one to do it. Essentially what this means is they are just torturing him by making him watch various human atrocities on repeat as they rewire his brain to have him fear this act and then also make himself sick whenever he thinks or does any of these acts. And so it gets to a point where he's eventually cured, but he's sort of a shell of himself and he can't really stand up for himself for fear that the sick might come, this feeling of negativity towards his old ways. And that raises the question of like the underlying question of good versus evil, and is it really good if you have no other choice? If your brain has been hardwired to only do what is good and resist all evil, then is it really good in the end? Or is it better to have the choice between good and evil and do evil instead, knowing that you could have done good? So that's sort of the main sort of theme of this book, and where it gets its title, A Clockwork Orange, taking the good and the natural within, the good human nature, good choices as the orange, and the making them more, that choice more mechanical, like a clock is sort of the way I'm saying it. Clocks tell time very specifically, they're very regimented. And so it's taking this natural response, this natural emotion of human nature, and making it very rigid, very mechanical, A Clockwork Orange. And it's interesting. Obviously, it's a lot to think about, and I'm sure you have more questions in when you clicked on this video, so I appreciate you sticking with me up until this time. But read the book for yourself and sort of see what you think about when you finish the book. I wouldn't say the plot is like is paramount to the book. It's more or less the themes that are present within the book and the change in the various characters that happen throughout the book that is more important. The plot is sort of a place to get you there. So yeah, like I said, I thought this book was great. I gave it 5 stars. It's like Crime and Punishment meets 1984 meets Catcher in the Rye. And I'll be thinking about this book for a while now. My next read actually will be Crime and Punishment. There are many references, like verbatim, to Crime and Punishment and the actions that took place within that book. So I'm reading it for myself to find out what's what. I know I'm rambling on a little bit here, so we'll wrap it up. But yeah, give this book a shot. Let me know if you have read it, what you thought about it. If you haven't read it, if you plan on reading it. So yeah, give the video if you like. If you liked it, consider subscribing. If you're new, I'll touch base again on this book in my weekly reading recap coming out after this video. So stay tuned for that. Appreciate you watching up until this point. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one.